The jar the boy is carrying is worth more than the boy. He is walking it across the city very carefully, the way you carry a thing that breaks. It is not medicine, it is not money. It is a bottle of clear glass blown into the shape of a human bladder, packed in straw like an egg, and what is inside it left your body about an hour ago. You are ill, 4 days now, and nobody is coming to see you. Nobody is going to touch you, look at you, or ask you a single question, because that is not how any of this works. You have peed into a jar and the jar is going to the doctor instead of you. He will hold it up to the window. He will turn it slowly in the light. He will tell that boy exactly what is wrong with a man he has never met. And at some point in that examination, he is going to taste it. That is not a quack. That is the finest physician in the city, and this is not the edge of medicine. For about 1,000 years, this was medicine. From Byzantine doctors in the 600s to respectable European ones in the 1600s, the single most important diagnostic instrument in the Western world was a jar of your urine. Not the pulse, not the fever, the jar. So there are 2 questions here, and the second one is why I made this video. 1. How does an entire profession spend 1,000 years drinking from that jar? And 2. The part nobody expects, how much of it was right? Because there is a direct descendant of this test in your bathroom cabinet right now, and you have almost certainly used it. Start with the jar, because the jar matters more than you think. It was called a matula, clear glass blown into the shape of a human bladder with a wide round belly and a narrow neck. It traveled in a padded wicker basket like an egg. Some had a lid, some came with the physician's name on them. You did not carry it to him casually, you carried it the way you carry a document. Here is how central this was. Open any medieval illustration of a medical scene and you will see a room full of figures in robes, and you will be able to identify the doctor instantly. He is the one holding a jar of urine up to the light. That was the badge. Not a bag, not a knife, not a book, a glass of somebody's pee raised to eye level. It meant physician the way a stethoscope around the neck means doctor today. There are shop signs, book covers, church windows, and coats of arms that use it. An entire profession chose that as its logo. And before you decide these people were idiots, they had a theory. A wrong theory, but a real one, and it hangs together beautifully. The body, they believed, was 4 liquids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Health was those 4 in balance. Illness was one of them running high or turning bad. Now, if the body is a system of liquids and you want to know what is happening inside a sealed container of liquid, what is the one sample the container hands you for free several times a day, no cutting required? Urine was understood as blood that had been filtered and cooked down by the organs, which means it is not waste. It is a report. It is the inside of the body voluntarily coming out to be read. That reasoning is wrong in its details and completely sound in its shape. Hold on to that, because it comes back at the end, and it comes back hard. So picture the actual examination, because it was a performance. The physician takes the jar to the window. He does not shake it, shaking ruins it. He holds it at arm's length against daylight. He turns it, he lowers it. He looks at the top of the liquid, then the middle, then the bottom. He tilts it to watch how it moves. He removes the lid and smells it. The room is silent. Everyone is watching a man study a jar of pee like it is a legal contract. And he is reading a genuine checklist. Color, clarity, thickness, smell, the foam on top, the cloud floating in the middle, the sediment at the bottom, the quantity, and when he wanted to be thorough, the taste. Color alone was not yellowish. There was a standard chart of 20 distinct shades running from clear white through pale straw, gold, amber, deep red, all the way to black. Each one had a name and a meaning. You have seen this chart even if you do not know it. It is drawn as a wheel, 20 little flasks arranged in a circle, each with a diagnosis written beside it. The best known was printed in 1506, and it is essentially a medical color swatch for urine. And here is my favorite detail about how they learned it. Around the year 1200, a Paris physician wrote the whole system as a poem, in verse, rhyming, because verse is easier to memorize than a list, which means for generations, medical students across Europe learned to diagnose disease by reciting poetry about the colors of urine. Somewhere out there, a nervous 19-year-old is being examined on his ability to perform pee as literature. Now the part that tips over from reasonable into oh no. The jar was treated as a map of your body. Because it was bladder-shaped, the physician divided the liquid into levels, and each level corresponded to a region of you. The foam and the film at the very top, your head; the upper liquid, your chest; the middle, your stomach and liver; the sediment settling at the bottom, your bladder, your kidneys, your reproductive organs. So bubbles on the surface meant a problem in the brain. Grit at the bottom meant a problem down there. The logic is, things sink in you the same way they sink in glass. This is completely made up. It is also elegant, teachable, consistent, and utterly impossible to argue with, which is exactly what a bad idea needs to survive 1,000 years. Okay, main event, the tasting. Because everybody knows this detail, everybody assumes it is the stupidest part and everybody is wrong. The tasting is the only part of this entire practice that still holds up. In 1674, an English physician named Thomas Willis wrote that the urine of certain wasting patients was wonderfully sweet, as if imbued with honey or sugar. He was not a crank. Willis was an Oxford professor, one of the founding figures of brain science. There is a ring of arteries at the base of your skull named after him, and he is the man who coined the word neurology. And having tasted it, he added a second word to the name of the disease. The disease was called diabetes. He added Mellitus. Mellitus is Latin for honeyed. That word is still in use. It is in millions of medical files today. It is on prescriptions that were printed this morning. It is there because a man tasted it and went looking for a word for the flavor. Except, and I love this, Willis was about 2,000 years late. Go east. Indian physicians described this same disease well over 2,000 years ago, and they gave it a name that translates as honey urine. They also worked out that it tended to run in families, that it struck the wealthy more often, that it was connected to a diet heavy in sweet, rich food and to a life without physical work, that patients were desperately thirsty, urinated constantly, and wasted away. That is not a lucky guess. That is a clinical description of type 2 diabetes, written down before anybody on Earth had a microscope. And the way they detected it is better than tasting. They noticed that ants went to it, flies gathered on it. Insects that ignore ordinary urine will swarm the urine of a diabetic because there is sugar in it. So the test was, leave a sample on the ground and see if the ants take an interest. They outsourced the taste test to an animal with a better palate and no gag reflex. And the name itself is a diagnosis. Around 1800 years ago, a Greek physician called Mellitus described the disease and named it diabetes, from a word meaning siphon, a pipe that liquid runs straight through, because that is what these patients had become. His description of it, the melting down of the flesh and limbs into urine. Before insulin, that is not a metaphor, that is a clinical account. The body, unable to use its sugar, breaks down its own muscle and fat and it leaves through the bladder. The patient watches themselves drain away. So, the grossest tool in medieval medicine caught the one major disease that actually changes the flavor of urine. It works. It is genuinely diagnostic. If you tasted sweetness, something was very wrong and you were right. So now you are thinking the obvious thing, and I want to get to it before you type it. You are thinking, fine, one real disease, one hit out of 1,000 years, the rest was theater and the tasting was the worst of it. Friend, the tasting was the honest part. Because at some point the profession discovered something more profitable than examining urine. You can examine urine without the patient. And once you can do that, you no longer need a sick person in the room. You need a jar, a boy with a basket, and a fee. The patient could be anywhere. The patient could be a village away. The patient could, as we are about to see, be a cow. So the trade reorganized itself around the basket. A boy arrives with a jar. The physician takes it to the window. He performs the whole ritual, the light, the turn, the tilt, the smell. And then he announces the illness of a person he has never met in a house he has never entered with a confidence you could bounce a coin off. The English called it casting the water, and it made the practitioners a nickname that I am delighted to report was in common use, piss prophets. In 1637, a doctor named Thomas Bryan got sick of it and published a book explaining exactly how the trick worked. He called it the piss prophet. The method was not medicine, it was cold reading. The physician takes the jar and starts talking slowly, vaguely, watching the messenger. Is it a man's water or a woman's? The boy answers. How long has it been thus? The boy answers. He is not silent while he studies the jar, he is fishing. Every fact he collects gets fed back a minute later as a revelation. The jar told him. The jar was never the instrument, the boy was the instrument. Which is why people started testing them, and people are wonderful. You take a jar of urine from a cow or from a perfectly healthy neighbor and you send it in with a sad face and a story about your suffering wife. And you wait, and a licensed physician holds it to the light and turns it thoughtfully and informs you that your wife is with child. Which was, in fairness, sometimes true of the cow. So why did this survive? Why does a profession keep a test that a cow can defeat? Status. And this is the part that explains everything. A physician was a university man. He had studied Latin, philosophy, and ancient authorities for years. He was a scholar, and scholars do not touch bodies. Cutting, setting bones, pulling teeth, draining wounds, that was the barber surgeon, a tradesman, a lower rank of person entirely. So the physician needed a way to diagnose that involved no touching, no blood, and no manual work. Something you could do at a distance in good clothes in front of an audience while quoting a text. A glass of urine held up to a window is perfect. It was not kept because it worked. It was kept because it looked like the work of a gentleman. And that is a fragile thing to be built on, because the moment the fashion turns, the same object means the opposite. By the 1600s, the flask had flipped. Serious physicians began treating urine-only diagnosis as the mark of a fraud. Colleges disciplined members for it. Writers mocked it. The instrument that had meant this man is a doctor for 1,000 years now meant this man is a con artist. Same object, same liquid, opposite meaning within about 2 generations. But hold on, before we bury the whole thing, remember what the fake ones were selling hardest. Pregnancy. Every piss prophet promised he could see a pregnancy in the jar, and they could not. But somebody could, and they did it 3,000 years earlier, and their method actually works. Ancient Egypt, there is a medical papyrus written around 1350 BCE containing this instruction. Take a bag of wheat and a bag of barley. Have the woman urinate on them every day. If either grows, she is pregnant. If nothing grows, she is not. And then it adds a bonus. If the barley sprouts first, it is a boy. If the wheat sprouts first, it is a girl. Now, in 1963, researchers actually ran this test. The result? For detecting pregnancy, it was right around 70% of the time, because the urine of a pregnant woman carries hormones that genuinely accelerate seed growth. For predicting the sex of the baby, it performed exactly as well as a coin. Which makes that papyrus, as far as anyone can tell, the oldest recorded pregnancy test on Earth, and the first written procedure in which a human being uses one living thing to reveal a hidden chemical inside another. That is a laboratory. It is a laboratory made of a bag of seeds, and it beat the professionals by 3,000 years because it did not care what anybody's opinion was. It just grew, or it did not. Okay, so how does the tasting actually end? Not the way you would assume. It does not end because doctors decided urine was worthless. It ends because something arrived that could read the jar better than a tongue could. 1694, a Dutch physician named Frederick Dekkers boils urine with a little acid and watches it turn cloudy and curdle in some patients only. He has just detected protein leaking from damaged kidneys with a saucepan. 1827, Richard Bright in London heats a spoonful of a patient's urine over a candle flame. If it clouds like cooking egg white, the kidneys are failing. He links it to the swelling, the illness, and the organs he later finds at autopsy, and the disease still carries his name. That is the whole turning point in one image, a spoon over a candle. The tongue did not lose an argument, it lost a job to better equipment. And once chemistry gets hold of it, the whole 1,000-year problem dissolves inside a century. Reagents, reactions, color changes that mean one specific molecule and nothing else. Not amber, therefore an excess of yellow bile, but this compound is present at this concentration in this sample, and it will be present tomorrow too. 1956. A company puts a chemical pad on the end of a paper strip. You dip it. It changes color. That color tells you there is sugar in the urine. A strip of paper, a few seconds, no training, no Latin, no window, no poem, no tasting. 1,000 years of the most prestigious skill in medicine replaced by a piece of card that a 9-year-old can operate correctly. So here is where I have to be fair to them, because this is the actual point of the video. That paper strip never went away. It is sitting in every clinic on Earth right now. The modern version has around 10 pads on it, and it tests for glucose, sugar, the thing Willis tasted, protein, the thing Bright boiled, blood, ketones, acidity, bile, pigments, chemicals that reveal a bacterial infection. And the lab report before any of that still records 2 things at the top: color and clarity. Urinalysis is one of the most frequently ordered tests in all of medicine. Hundreds of millions of times a year, a human being is handed a small container and asked to fill it so that somebody can find out what is happening inside them without opening them up. The medieval physician's question was, what does this liquid tell me about the whole body? That is not a discarded question. That is the exact question the laboratory answers today. So go back to the window. The robes, the daylight, the jar, the boy waiting by the door. He is not doing the wrong thing. He is doing the right thing with no instruments. He has arrived at a genuinely brilliant idea that the body files a daily written report about itself about 700 years before anybody could read the handwriting. He has eyes, a nose, and a tongue. So he uses eyes, nose, and tongue. When your only chemistry set is your face, you are going to end up tasting some things. And they left 2 souvenirs in your life and you use both of them. The first is a word, diabetes mellitus, siphon and honeyed, a pipe that liquid runs straight through and the flavor of what comes out. It is written into medical records every single day in every country by people who have never once thought about what the second word means. It is a tasting note, it is somebody's review. The second is in your bathroom cabinet. Because the most widely used medical test in the world, the one you can buy in a supermarket, the one that changes people's entire lives in 3 minutes on a Tuesday morning, is still a stick that you pee on. 4,000 years of medicine. We upgraded the barley. So they were not tasting urine because they were fools. They were tasting it because they were right about the jar and wrong about everything they could bring to it. And for 1,000 years, the best available instrument for reading the inside of a human being was a man, a window, and a working tongue. The physician at that window and the machine in the hospital basement are asking the identical question. One of them just had to answer it personally. The boy is still walking across the city with the jar. He has no idea he is carrying the future of medicine. Neither does the man who is about to drink it. Comments: no lab, no strip, no chemistry, and it is your child on the bed. Would you taste it? Be honest. I read the replies. And subscribe, because next time it is the 200 years Europeans spent eating ground-up mummies as medicine. Rich people in pharmacies with a receipt.